What's up? Spawn Assassin. Coming to you live for another live stream. Please feel free to comment, definitely subscribe to this channel. Um, Anybody can come into the panel if they like to. I'm gonna do this reaction video in terms of traveling and yeah, it's just pretty sad. I remember watching this on YouTube about the case, and this a few years before I was born, actually, and I was just traumatized of his death, or how they unalived him, if you will, and yeah, it's just pretty bad. Um, So I'm about to go ahead and pull the link if anybody wants to do a reaction video with me. Definitely gonna do a reaction video to this. Rest in peace to Mark Kilroy. Yeah, the condolences to his family. This was taken back 35 years ago. So I'm definitely about to play this clip.
Está realizando una búsqueda en México, Florida y Texas para localizar al líder de una cadena de narcotraficantes ligada por lo menos a una docena de asesinatos satánicos en México. Mark Kilroy, de 21 años, cuyas piernas fueron cortadas a la altura de las rodillas. También le cortaron la cabeza y cocinaron parte del cuerpo.
Hey everyone, my name is Liz and welcome to the Crime All Over channel, where we talk about true crime, mysteries, and the unexplained. Today's episode is a cautionary tale on travel. What happens when an innocent vacation booked for fun actually turns into a nightmare? Viewer discretion is advised and trigger warnings for unaliving and torture. Okay, let's get to it. Mark James Kilroy was born on March 5th, 1968 in Chicago, Illinois. His dad Jim was a chemical engineer and his mom Helen volunteered as a paramedic and was also a stay-at-home mom. His family moved to Santa Fe, Texas when Mark was born, where he and his younger brother were raised. At his high school, he made the honors, was a great athlete, played multiple sports, and was part of the Boy Scouts. One of his old friends remembers and describes him as a really nice guy, liked to joke around, very friendly, very outgoing, who was also extremely religious and would attend church regularly. He graduated high school in 1986 and then went to Southwest Texas State University, but then transferred to another school on a scholarship for basketball. He joined a fraternity before deciding to quit sports altogether and transferred to the University of Texas. There he became a pre-med student and was on his way of becoming a doctor. Before prepping for his medical college admission tests, he decided to go on spring break with his friends. On March 10, 1989, Mark was picked up by his friend Bradley to start their spring break vacation, and from there, they picked up two other friends, Bill and Brent. Interesting fact is another friend was actually supposed to go on this trip. His name was Ryan. He backed out at the last minute. He says he just doesn't know why he changed his mind, but by changing his mind at the last minute, that may have saved his own life. The group of friends drove for 9 hours and checked into a hotel in South Padre Island, located in South Texas. Many people from around the country went to South Padre for spring break. The hotel they stayed at, which was a Sheraton Hotel and Resort, hosted a lot of events during this time. It was extremely popular. This hotel went all out with beer sponsors, free movies, free music concerts. They had surf simulator activities. You could appear in ad commercials, and they even gave guests access to free phone calls. The group actually started early on their trip, so not many people were at the hotel or the beach the day they arrived. But once the weekend hit, all the spring breakers came. At this point, Mark and his friend did call his parents to check in with them and let them know that they were okay and where they were. The guys basically did normal things during their time at the hotel. Tanned, ate lunch, went to the beach, and attended the Miss Tan Line contest. Afterwards, the group headed back to the hotel to take a nap. When the group woke up, they decided to head to Mexico in Bradley's car to continue partying. During the destination, they stopped in Port Isabel, Texas, where they went to a local Sonic restaurant. At the Sonic restaurant, they met some girls from another college who were also going to Mexico for spring break, and I guess all of them decided to head to Mexico and party together. They all headed to the Gateway International Bridge in Brownsville, Texas. The whole group parked their cars and just walked the bridge to Mexico. They spent the rest of the evening at a nightclub called Sgt. Pepper's in Matamoros, Tamaulipas, Mexico. Tamaulipas is the state, Mexico is the country, and Matamoros was the city. From what I got back in the 80s, Matamoros was a safe, nice town. Now, present time, it's a different story, but it wasn't a dangerous place in Mexico back then, and it was actually really nice. The group partied until the next morning. After, the guys just walked back over to the bridge, headed to their cars, and returned to their hotel in South Padre Island. When they arrived at the hotel, they did attend some of the parties and another contest. Mark even bumped into some of his former frat brothers. At night, around 10:30, the guys decided to head back to Mexico to party again. And so they hopped in the car, parked in Brownsville parking lot, just like the night before, and crossed the bridge, heading their way to Matamoros. They first decided to head to a bar called Los Sombreros. They had a few drinks and ended up going to a second bar called Hard Rock Cafe. This bar was much crazier than the previous one, where I guess other American tourists were throwing empty beer bottles from the upstairs balcony, being drunk and very rowdy. This one was louder, it was more packed, and Mark and his friends were at the bar. Mark met a couple of girls and started talking to them. After this, his friends don't recall seeing him during this time for quite a while. At around 2 a.m., Bill started suggesting to the group to head back to their hotel to wrap up the night. When his friends decided to go outside, they did actually spot Mark leaning against the car and talking to a woman from a prior contest they attended, the Miss Tan Line contest. At this point, a lot of people were coming out of the bars, like groups and swarms of tourists. Bradley and Brent became separated from the group and walked to a store that was close to the border, assuming to wait for his friends and regroup. At this point, Mark decided to say goodbye to the other girl he was talking to and wait for Bill to catch up with him. But Bill went to pee in an alley somewhere, so Mark just ended up waiting for him. When Bill was done, he stepped onto the streets, only to realize, after a couple of seconds, Mark was nowhere to be found. The three friends searched for Mark until around 4:30 in the morning. They assumed maybe Mark crossed the bridge back to the States, just waiting for them near the car. But when they arrived at the parking lot, he wasn't there. They waited a bit more to see if he might turn up. When he didn't, the group decided to head back to the hotel. They figured Mark probably left with a girl towards the hotel and maybe stayed in her room. So when they arrived and they went to sleep, the next morning there was still no sign of Mark. And at that moment, the guys then decided to contact the police to report him missing. Mark's missing report wasn't taken so seriously at first. The police were used to getting reports of people missing in Matamoros, especially during spring break. Obviously, people are drunk or fights happen, and the people who would originally be missing ended up being found. When the word spread in Mark's family that he was missing, his Uncle Ken, who worked in the U.S. Customs Service out in Los Angeles, had put together a police task force in order to try to search for him in Brownsville. Back in Matamoros, word started spreading quickly that a white American tourist went missing in that area. The police were nervous with the negative attention it brought because they were scared it would affect the tourism and the businesses of the local areas. So frequently visited during that time, that was the people's bread and butter, and they did not want to lose any revenue. So they put out that maybe Mark became missing in Brownsville instead of Matamoros, and that maybe his friends were wrong about the location and time of events that occurred. Bradley, Brett, and Bill denied it. They knew that Matamoros police was shifting the blame out onto the states. When the investigation started to show itself as becoming more serious, the Mexican Federal Police Force agreed to also get serious and work on the case with the U.S. They helped U.S. investigators interview potential witnesses and worked with tips that were coming in. Custom agents went with the trio of friends to try to retrace their steps. Officials in Texas contacted the U.S. consulate in Matamoros and asked to carry out a search of Mark's description to try to find him maybe missing in a jail or hospital. The authorities on both sides did believe that Mark's disappearance was connected to foul play. Maybe he was a victim of robbery then murder, or a drug-related murder. But what made the investigation more difficult was that none of the friends could pinpoint the exact time or the exact location of when Mark went missing. It also didn't help that there were no real strong leads, no matter how many tips came in. Investigators even went so far as to hire a hypnotist to put the friends under hypnosis in order to find more clues to help the investigation. Under hypnosis, Bradley said before he became separated to Mark, he saw a young Hispanic man who was wearing a blue plaid shirt with a very visible scar on his face, speaking to Mark. The man walked up to Mark and said, "Hey, don't I know you from somewhere?" He remembers this, but just couldn't recall if Mark responded to the man or not. Investigators came to the idea that Mark was kidnapped from a robbery. Usually with kidnapped, people want a ransom, but since no one called in for a ransom, they went ahead with the idea of murder and assumed his body was brought to a remote place. U.S. Border Patrol helicopters and vehicles searched the Rio Grande River, but nothing turned up. Meanwhile, Mark's parents headed to the Rio Grande River as well, handing out flyers offering a $15,000 reward to anyone who had any information. They wanted to be involved with putting the word out about his disappearance as much as they could, and they put an extreme amount of work into making his case heard. People who lived in the same town as Mark grew up in actually traveled to Matamoros to hand out flyers as well. After nothing came about the leads or new information, Jim and Helen headed back to the U.S. and met with the governor of Texas, a U.S. senator, and an attorney general to help with the case and to get the word out about their son. Officials from Texas even went so far as to let Jim and Helen know they would be speaking to the governor of Tamaulipas and have locals from where he became missing get more involved in the case. The mayor at the time, Henry Cisneros, did agree to put pressure on the Mexican authorities to keep the case alive. Publicly, the U.S. investigators had a positive reaction with how the Mexican Federal Police was handling the case. They wanted to present a team effort on the case, but privately, they concluded the state and law officials of Mexico were not to be trusted. Both the state and local police of Matamoros were slow on the case and did not communicate much information with the U.S. This had them conclude the kidnapping was deeper and maybe even darker than they had anticipated. Whoever was responsible for the disappearance of Mark had insiders within the law. Why else would Mexican authorities withhold information? The case became national news on March 26. Tips and letters started coming in, but nothing concrete came about any of them. Some tips were actually reported to be false or misleading as a joke, which were understandably devastating to Mark's parents. When Jim and Helen returned to Santa Fe, locals from the community helped raise money to continue in aiding the search. On April Fool's Day, 1989, Mexican authorities were doing a checkpoint near the town of Santa Elena. This was a huge routine checkpoint. The Mexican Border Patrol were amping up security in order to comply with the country's new anti-drug policies to help catch suspicious activity or drugs coming in or leaving Mexico. Everything was normal until they saw a red truck trying to avoid the checkpoint and speed through. The car was coming from Texas and sped on the Mexican federal highway. This particular highway is connected to Matamoros. Police thought this was too strange and extremely suspicious. Instead of pulling him over, they chose to follow the car. They followed the car to a ranch, parked, and hid for surveillance. After half an hour, the mystery man left the ranch. Officers decided to go on the property and investigate. Police discovered paraphernalia connected to cults and traces of marijuana. They decided right there and then this was much more than just a guy speeding off, and made the decision to leave in order to gather more intel. Mexican authorities decided to speak with police informants to see if anyone knew about this mysterious ranch. They found out the man in the truck was named Serafin Hernandez, a past criminal. He grew up in the US but still had very strong ties in Mexico. His family was known as the Hernandez family, a small criminal family ring. They were known to deal drugs. The police started tracking Serafin's cell phone records. Matamoros police felt a mounting pressure from the disappearance of American, so they acted quickly, and with the information the informants gave to police and cell phone records, they went ahead and brought a heavy police force to make arrests. Matamoros police arrested Serafin, his uncle Elio Hernandez, a man named David Valdez, Sergio Salinas, and the caretaker of the property, Domingo Reyes Bustamante. They sent everyone into police custody, and police reported during the interrogations the criminals were very relaxed and not at all worried. The authorities chose to question Domingo separately from everyone else. They chose to interview him on the ranch instead of take him in for questioning like everyone else. During questioning, they showed a photo of Mark to Domingo, who admitted he did in fact see Mark and pointed to where exactly he saw him. Domingo also told police the ranch always had visitors come and go. The time he saw Mark, he wasn't able to understand him because Domingo only spoke Spanish and Mark was only speaking English. Back at the station, police questioned everyone. Serafin was questioned away from the other group members. At first, no one talked, but after a while, Serafin confessed to everything. He told police he was the one who helped kidnap Mark. Not only that, but Mark was not the only one this happened to. Over the course of several months at the ranch in Santa Elena, the group kidnapped several people. Once Serafin started to confess, this gave the police information to question the others, and one by one, they all started to confess. Serafin eventually told police who the leader was and what exactly was going on. His name, Adolfo Constanzo, and another leader on top of that. Her name was Sarah Aldrete, second in command. Adolfo was born in Miami, Florida in 1962. He was of Cuban descent. He had 2 siblings, but all had different fathers. His dad died when Adolfo was still an infant. His mom moved to Puerto Rico, where she eventually remarried. And from there, they went back to Miami, where her second husband died. Because of the death, he left the family with money, quite a lot, so they were stable enough financially throughout this time. Now, in Miami, where he grew up, neighbors described the family as weird, eerie-like. They would recall dead animals in the not well-kept backyard that the family had, and even when one would get into an argument with them, neighbors would find a dead animal on their front door. They believed the mother practiced the occult at this time. His mom was once even arrested when police entered their home and found horrible living conditions. 27 animals in a very small house. The floor was allegedly covered with blood, urine, and feces of the animals. His mother eventually married a 3rd time, but this time to a criminal who was involved with trafficking drugs. He was also a believer of the occult. His stepdad allegedly taught Adolfo the advice that he remembered for the rest of his life, which was let the non-believers kill themselves with drugs so they, Adolfo and his family, can profit off of them. During this time, Adolfo's mother also believed her son had psychic abilities, so she introduced him to Palo Mayombe, This religion is an Afro-Caribbean religion that I guess includes a significant amount of animal sacrifices. Around this time, he was also shown Santeria. A bit about Santeria, it's a religion. From the media, it portrays it to be witchcraft, but it's not. It's disrespectful to refer to that. Santeria started in Africa and worked its way to Latin America. It is a very popular religion in both countries. And from what I read, the religion believes in energy, music, which is a big part of the way they pray. They believe in ancestors guiding them, watching over them, and they lean more on the natural remedy side of healing. There is a small sacrifice in the religion. It's a small percentage from what I read, and they eat it or donate it after. They don't do any torturing of the animals though. Back to Adolfo. Fast forward to him being a teenager. In his youth, allegedly, he and his mom were both arrested for petty crimes. There really aren't any specifics on it, but I'd assume it was vandalism or theft. After high school, he began prep school, but was expelled soon after. In 1984, at the age of 22, he moved to Mexico City to work as a model for a brief time and then a psychic. He was described to be good-looking, charismatic, and popular. So good at reading tarot cards for customers, this is how he met and gained his followers. Martin Quintana, Jorge Montes, and Omar Orrea. They would eventually help him run the psychic business. He started offering more services like cleansing, casting spells, and sacrificing animals. This allegedly led to high-end clients, high up in Mexico's society. Police, drug dealers, celebrities, musicians, actresses, government officials, they all became part of his regulars. Business was booming, his connections were strong, and he was charging up to $50,000 to provide cartels a spell of protection from the law. I'm not sure if it's 50 pesos or 50 US dollars. If it's pesos, then it would have been $5,000. It is allegedly claimed by his followers he thought these spells weren't enough. He decided to go to a step up and start robbing cemeteries for bones in the graves. Once retrieved, he would boil the bones in a cauldron, which would create a stronger spell for protection. Once he allegedly started doing protection spells for the cartel, he decided he wanted to go into business with them. He wanted to do 50-50 with the cartel, so he tried to approach a very well-known cartel and to tell them he was interested, 50-50 selling drugs. But this cartel said no. When this happened, he became angry and supposedly murdered 7 family members from this cartel, the very same one that rejected him. A very big message to give to any cartel. When the bodies of the members were found, things were missing. Toes, fingers, brains. Even one body had a spine missing. After this, Adolfo spoke to another cartel who had agreed to go into the drug business with him. Selling drugs was so successful for Adolfo, he made huge profits. People around town recall him driving a Mercedes and always being flashy with the money. He started to believe human remains were not strong enough though. He was getting deeper into the criminal underworld and needed more protection. He became fixated on sacrificing living people in order to make the protection even stronger. Shortly after notifying his followers of this, he met a woman named Sarah Aldrete, who eventually, with Adolfo's guidance, became his right-hand man/lover. Sarah was born in Matamoros, Tamaulipas, Mexico. She was described as tall, fit, attractive, went to school in America while still living in Mexico. So she would cross the bridge from Mexico to Texas to attend school every day, and ended up going to Texas Southmost College, wanting to become a gym teacher for school-aged children. Her boyfriend at the time helped sell drugs part-time for the Hernandez family. When Adolfo allegedly saw her at a distance, he immediately wanted to meet her and have a proper introduction because he was so smitten with her. I wasn't able to find much about her childhood, just mostly college and after. Under Adolfo's teaching, Sarah soon became a high priestess, just like him. He trusted her so much, he would let her call the shots, especially when he was out selling drugs and dealing with the cartel side of business. They would kidnap people, torture and sacrifice them, and then boil the bones. They killed about 17 to 20 people doing this, Soon after, Adolfo became fixated on the idea that they needed to sacrifice and use the brain of an American in order to have the ultimate protection and luck. Police found out from Seraphin the cult kidnapped and murdered Mark as a sacrificial killing in order to give the group immunity, luck, and strength from the law. All of it was done under orders from Adolfo, who was so fixated on finding the white male to sacrifice. Seraphin now confessed to kidnapping and murdering Mark Kilroy. And then Seraphin explained how it all went down to the beginning. He explained to police his family was involved in the drug trade. One day, one of his family members died from a shooting, possibly a rival gang or a trade gone wrong. From the incident, he and his uncle Elio, brothers Seraphin Sr. and Ovidio, went to Adolfo and asked protection for the family in exchange for their connections and half of the profits from their own family drug business. After spending time with Adolfo, the family started to believe in his psychic abilities, and soon after became members of the cult themselves. From this point on, they were included in everything. Now, Seraphin explained the first unalivings the group did, and they were not for rituals, but they were for revenge from other cartels, from getting ripped off, or business deals gone wrong. That fateful night when Mark was waiting for his friend to be done using the bathroom, a man tried to get his attention by offering him a ride. Mark slightly grew closer to the car, maybe didn't hear him, interested in the ride, or even politely to decline. But once he grew closer to the vehicle and away from his friend, Seraphin and another follower grabbed Mark and tried to force him into the car. Mark was athletic, so he was strong and fit. He fought back and was able to get away. He ran down 2 streets before being caught by another car who was controlled by a friend of the followers and forced Mark inside by gunpoint. He was overpowered and handcuffed in the back of the car. They brought him to their private ranch and left Mark alone in the car all night. When morning came, Domingo, also known as the ranch's caretaker, went to Mark directly and fed him breakfast. Soon after, the group called Adolfo to notify him they had found and caught their American victim. 12 hours of being held at the ranch, Adolfo and the rest of the followers arrived to see Mark. They decided to duct tape his whole face and mouth and walked him to a storage cabin on the ranch with his hands tied around his back. This storage cabin was referred to as a temple that had an altar. Later on through the entire night, Mark was repeatedly tortured and essayed. He was brought out to the field where allegedly Adolfo took a machete and began hitting him with it. His brain was taken to be boiled in the African cauldron, and a spell was to be done. Adolfo ordered Seraphin to cut Mark's legs. Seraphin explained to police cutting off the legs were done to help move the body faster and make burying it easier. A wire would be then inserted into his spinal cord as done many times to many victims in the past. This was done so after the buried bodies were decomposed, members could easily pull out the wire attached to bones and create a good luck necklace with it. With Seraphin's confession, the police decided to bring the 4 suspects to the ranch, and Seraphin actually agreed to show the police where the murder happened and where exactly Mark's remains were. This is when they made them locate the body and then dig up the mass grave. The police recorded that a strong indication where the grave was wire pieces sticking out from the dirt, the very same ones they put inside Mark. The suspects dug up all the murdered victims, and the police discovered 15 male bodies, all horribly mutilated. The 15 bodies were all within the span of 9 months. Police quickly recruited a professor of anthropology at the Texas Southmost College to go to the ranch and tell them exactly what was going on with all the cult paraphernalia they found. Coincidentally, the same professor was a former teacher of a class Sarah had attended in the past. At the ranch, they found Adolfo's diary that contained his writings on the practice, and the professor found him to be extremely knowledgeable about the religion. Before, the police were basically going by the group being a satanic or voodoo cult, but the professor proclaimed it was neither and explained to them the differences between the religions and the sacrifices Adolfo was doing. Even though there was an insane amount of human remains on the ranch, police ruled out cannibalism. The next step of the investigation was to have the bodies identified. Mark's dental records helped ID him pretty quickly. All but 3 bodies were actually identified. Out of all the bodies found, police concluded only 5 victims were actually used for rituals. This goes back to what Serafin had claimed in his interrogation, where most of the group's unalivings happened because of deals gone wrong, rivals, or favors for others. That the unalivings were more about revenge than the actual rituals for the cult. While the police raided the ranch, they found more than 200 pounds of illegal substances and at least 12 guns, including 3 machine guns. The police also found remains of animals around the property. A Capitol Police officer on the case had seen there were very similar things going on between the victims on the ranch and another unaliving he investigated in 1987. There was a young maid who went missing. Some pieces of the maid's clothing were found at a temple, almost like an altar identical to the cabin on the ranch. When the actual body was found by a river, it was found along with 7 others. This meant that the cult's unalivings were longer, more frequently, and probably farther than anyone really knew themselves. So with Serafin's confession and all this information, on April 12th, the followers who were taken into arrest were brought to the Mexican Federal Judicial Police for a press conference in Matamoros. 250 journalists and counting from around the world came. The journalists asked questions and the suspects were allowed to answer. Elio Hernandez proclaimed he was an executioner for Adolfo's cult, but he was also the one to back up Serafin's story that Adolfo ordered and unalived Mark. The followers explained the cult's ranks and detailed how scars branded into the skin by an arrow-shaped blade let others know in the cult that you were allowed to unalive people. And Uncle Leo had all the scars. When all this was happening and announced on national news, the police found out Adolfo, Sarah, and 3 others had fled. Now back in Texas, Jim and Helen were hoping for their son's safe return. Instead, were notified when his body was discovered and held a memorial service in his town.
Kilroy's plan to remember their son by setting up an anti-drug foundation in Mark's honor.
Think about it. Here I am, a father. I have to think of my son. He was running, trying to get away. My son was begging for his life. Think about that. Do you want that to happen to your children? Do you want that to be you? That's why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for you.
Jim and Helen did meet with George Bush, the president at the time, to talk drug control. Now, 2 weeks after the bodies were found and identified, police and investigators went on the property, brought people in, found out what they were dealing with, discovered these things, did the press. The Mexican Federal Police decided to burn the whole place down. They supposedly brought a healer to bless the ranch before burning the cabins and the house down with gasoline. When U.S. investigators questioned this move, they were met with no explanation. Although the ranch is where Adolfo felt so big and powerful, and once he heard about the fire, he went into a rage, but everyone highly doubts that this was the reason why. The day they found the bodies, Adolfo got word from whoever his source of connections were that things were closing in on him, and that very same day he actually fled. He stayed at a Holiday Inn in Texas and flew to Mexico where he owned an apartment. Like I mentioned earlier, he escaped with Sarah and 3 others. Meanwhile, police had no idea where he was, so U.S. and Mexican officials started a nationwide manhunt, and he was considered armed and dangerous. Tips came in and investigators discovered he was last seen driving his very flashy Mercedes in Brownsville. There he owned a home which police raided. He wasn't there, but they did find an altar, almost like the one at the ranch, with animal blood just covering the whole house. Now at this time back in Texas, Adolfo, Sarah, and 11 other cult members were indicted by a state jury. They were indicted for importing drugs in the U.S., conspiracy to possess with the intent of distributing. Now arrest warrants were quickly issued for Adolfo and everyone else who fled. On 17th of April, Serafin Sr., the brother of Serafin, was arrested in Houston by the DEA. Federal charges were filed against him for importing drugs, possession, and conspiracy. There were 2 others arrested and implicated along with him. Investigators find out Adolfo was involved with a $20 million failed drug operation in Houston that was busted in June 1988. So they believed him to be hiding somewhere there since he owned a home there too. They raided the house and found ritualistic candles, another altar, and even paperwork with Seraphin's brother's name on it. Police and investigators raid Adolfo's homes in the US. When he doesn't turn up, they turn their attention to Mexico. Mexican authorities find out Adolfo owns a property in Atizapán, Mexico. They find people living there, but no Adolfo. Police arrested a woman in the house who claimed she was a sister of one of Adolfo's lovers/followers. They discover gay adult videos, a hidden chamber in the home with an altar, and Sarah's stuff left behind. Police questioned the gay community solely on the fact of the videos, but there were no leads. They also couldn't find any evidence he was even at the house. However, when police found Sarah's things, they had assumed Adolfo unalived her because she knew too much to be alive at this point and concluded her deceased. But American authorities thought different. They believed this was just a ruse. They believed she left her belongings in the house to try to trick the Mexican authorities. They find that Adolfo owns another house in Juarez, Mexico. They raid that and they arrest 3 followers there. Now in Mexico City, Capitol Police Officer Juan Armando Ponce, who I mentioned earlier, who recalled other crimes that had the same details as the victims found at the ranch, noticed the unalivings that happened were very similar to the cases between 1987 and 1989. He questioned local witchcraft practitioners and soon found out Adolfo was hiding in Mexico City. The police spread out 16 officers to try to find him. Originally, the lead was in a town called Guatemoc, but that fell through. Then they pursued another strong lead in the next neighborhood, Anzures. The police were searching the town for anything suspicious, and then they noticed a man trying to buy a lot of food at a grocery store using American dollar bills. They decided to do some surveillance and follow him, which led them to an apartment building. On May 6, 1989, Mexican police surrounded the apartment building and began to raid it. Adolfo was in fact hiding inside the apartment, and so was Sarah, his followers Alvaro, Martin, and Omar. He obviously knew what was going on and from the window barricaded everyone in the apartment and decided that it was a great move to shoot at police with his gun. The rest soon decided to join him and start shooting at the police too. Allegedly, Adolfo started to throw money at the police from his window. He started to burn it and then throw it at the policemen, all while shooting at them. This all went down no more than 45 minutes, and soon after, Adolfo ordered Alvaro to unalive him and Martin. At first, Alvaro hesitated, but Adolfo did not have time, so he decided to strike him across the face and demand that he do it, or he'll be forever damned in eternity. Adolfo embraced Martin in a hug and did not let go when Alvaro stood in front of them with a machine gun and opened fire. Sarah witnessed it all, and allegedly she ran out the door screaming and crying that Adolfo was dead. Police were already inside the building, but once they entered the actual apartment, they basically discovered a bunch of his followers hiding in another apartment in the same building. Pictures were taken of the crime scene and all the followers were arrested, all charged with homicide, criminal association, wounding officers, and damage to public property. When police questioned Alvaro, he told police that Adolfo snapped, started to have a mental breakdown, and said that all he had was lost and no one was going to have his money. Alvaro quickly confessed he was also involved with Mark's unaliving and backed up Elio's and Seraphin's claim that Adolfo was the one to unalive Mark. Now, after they were arrested, Mexican authorities made them speak to the press.
Mexican police have arrested Aldrete. FBI officials say that will save them from having to extradite her. Aldrete says she is sorry for what she's done.
I'm sorry. If I wouldn't know that it was like this, I wouldn't be in it.
Sarah denied everything. She said she was never involved in any unalivings or rituals. No idea that unalivings was even going on. Only until she saw the case being presented on national news did she find out the truth. Her claims also went so far into stating she was not, nor ever was, an official member of the cult, never even Adolfo's lover, only an innocent prisoner held by the force by Adolfo and his followers at the end. During this time, police feared that Adolfo staged his unalivings with a fake body. but investigators DNA'd fingerprints on the body and confirmed it was him. Some of the items Adolfo had were actually never brought in as evidence, such as one of his machine guns and a suitcase he owned that reportedly had important items and names inside. On May 15th, a judge didn't even bother giving anyone arrested bail. It soon came out that Adolfo had AIDS, and any one of his lovers would have contacted it. Omar admitted that he and Sarah were Adolfo's lovers, and he also admitted that he had AIDS. When they tested Sarah during this time, people began speculating that maybe she was not Adolfo's girlfriend, because when tests came back, it was confirmed she was disease-free and clean. And only Omar had contacted AIDS. He was admitted to the hospital in August and passed away February the following year due to complications with AIDS. The courts having enough evidence to go to trial, they were all found guilty. Serafin Sr. did cooperate with U.S. and Mexican officials. He was sentenced to only 18 months in prison. The person who actually owned the ranch, Brigido Hernandez, cooperated with police and wasn't charged with any crimes. Ovidio, Serafin's other brother, who was definitely involved in the cult, he was never formally arrested because he was never ever found, and to this day he's still wanted by Mexican police officials. Alvaro was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the unaliving of Adolfo and Martin. The followers arrested at the apartment building, Juan and Jorge, they were convicted of a completely different unaliving charge, and they were sentenced to 35 years in prison. Domingo Bustamante, the ranch's caretaker, was in prison the whole time the investigation was going on, and was released from jail after only paying a $500 bond. Salvador Vidal Garcia Alarcón, chief of the Federal Judicial Police, he was arrested for drug trafficking and indicted. When they questioned some of the followers about evidence regarding Salvador's drug involvement, they admitted he was the one who was the cult's contact in the police force. So this guy was the one letting them know what was going down, and this is how they were able to get away with so many things, or even have a leg up. And this is how Adolfo was able to evade police for so long. When they questioned Sarah about Salvador's participation in the cult, she claimed Adolfo allegedly unalived two men as a favor for Salvador, so in return, Salvador would help him. But Salvador denied this. He claimed when he was a little boy, he became possessed with spirits and eventually asked Adolfo's help in ridding these spirits, and that was the only involvement he had with Adolfo, and it was strictly solely for religious purposes. Now, the original suspects arrested on the ranch claimed they were forced to dig up the graves for hours at gunpoint by police. All were sentenced to 67 years in jail, but later on they had it reduced to 17 years because of Mexican law. If you're sentenced to capital murder, it doesn't do more than 50 years. After the trial, all of them claimed their innocence and claimed that the police coerced them into the confession, especially Serafin. Now this is what he says. Could it be true or could it be another lie? You be the judge. These are his claims. He was an innocent American citizen, going to college in Texas. He knew who Sarah was, but never actually was really affiliated with her. He says he was never on the ranch that day the four guys were arrested. He was on vacation to visit his family in Matamoros, when all of a sudden police arrested him. He had never even met Adolfo. He had no idea about the ranch's connection to the cult, and was not even there digging the bodies. Only after the bodies were found and dug up, he was brought to the actual ranch. In the interrogation room, he claimed he was beat by police and threatened to sign the confession if he didn't. Police would hurt his family. He also claims at the press interviews he was not even allowed to speak English. He, along with another suspect arrested on the ranch, claim a federal police commander found him guilty solely because he was related to his uncle Elio and brother Ovidio, who were in fact connected to the cult. There were no recorded interviews made public, and it is very suspicious Mexican police decided to burn down the ranch instead of investigating and digging deeper. Another suspect arrested on the ranch claims the same thing. He was arrested by association with the Hernandez family and beaten for the confession. Now on to Sarah. Sarah was sentenced on May 3rd, 1994 to 64 years in prison. She maintained her innocence throughout the entire time, but still signed a confession to being linked with the unalivings and the cult. In 2003, still maintaining innocence, she continued on giving interviews and wrote a book. Now, back when she was first arrested and they made her do a press sit down, she had said that she had no idea what was going on, and she even had told journalists when they had asked her questions that she was sorry and she had no idea that she was being forced. Her version of events was that she was forced to hide in Mexico City with him, with Adolfo. That first she believed in him, but then she discovered the gruesome side. She wanted to leave, then soon after was forced to go along with it. Years later in her book, she explains how naive and innocent she is. She was held hostage by Adolfo. Other followers in the cult were innocent, and Adolfo was actually unalived by the police. She talks about her treatment in jail, questions the burning of the ranch, and how police, both American and Mexican, helped conceal the names of very famous and very powerful people who were former clients of the cult. She says the only reason she originally confessed in the interrogation room was because she was tortured. Supposedly, police stripped, put her upside down, and beat her, but not before ripping her toenails off one by one. In recent interviews, she does describe Adolfo's violence towards her before the shootout, but you have to look at the real facts. There were followers of the cult who had claimed to investigators Sarah would help lure victims to their demise. She was also the one in charge when Adolfo was gone. This was also said by multiple key followers in the cult. It came to light that during her time in the cult, she was able to go back from Mexico to Texas for college the entire time. Her peers at school had said she seemed nice and normal, even happy, and researchers claim this shows signs of multiple personality disorder. A big red flag, she claimed during the hostage situation in Mexico City, that Adolfo would hold a gun to her head, but that he would just threaten her with it. She also said she felt like he had total mind control over her. She continues to talk about the corruption of a cover-up from both sides. This is the side of truth I think she is telling. A heavy player from the International Police Agency, Florentino Ventura, who is the former Mexican head of Interpol, was revealed to be one of Adolfo's clients. He died by self-unaliving when the investigation went down. So no one knows the true story behind that, but it is said he was another one of the cult's contacts and connections. There is a silver lining to all this, if you can call it that. Jim and Helen decided to set up the Mark Kilroy Foundation. The foundation offers drug awareness and counseling to kids, partner with others to provide programs educating on drug preventions and free outdoor sport programs at summer camp. Not only that, but they offer youth advice on how to safely prepare for a trip abroad. Jim Kilroy also wrote a book about his son and the case. The proceeds of the book go into supporting the foundation. It's called Sacrifice. So if you do want to read the case further from the point of view of Mark's family, I would suggest this book. There are so many cases out there where people go missing, or one friend gets lost, or they lost sight of another, never to be seen again. This can happen anywhere in the world at any time to anyone. Always be careful and remember there are quick travel guides and videos out there detailing how to keep safe at your destination and what to avoid. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We are on Instagram and TikTok. Links are at the bottom. Missing poster at the end. Be safe. Bye.
So this is actually the video I was actually trying to convey about as far as traveling. Um, like it doesn't matter what race you are, obviously. When you go to travel, travel with caution first and foremost. Then, just learn how to have fun, but you just gotta go to areas that are not corrupted. Uh, well, of course, like the technology then was like barely, popular, I should say. But you just gotta keep your head on a swivel. When you're at like, dusk till dawn, when the sun goes down, and just You know, be super duper careful with the best of your ability. Um, like be around like street lights, cars, like some activity that's going on that people, you know, observe, as well, but it's just that, it can be very, very treacherous once you like go somewhere by yourself, even with your friends, and you like basically divide yourself to like go to the store. And yeah, like nighttime is one of the easiest, you know, time frames, and people can easily get caught up in like getting killed, vanished, you know, get on the live real easily, you know, and people don't even know your whereabouts until like a month or months later. It's really insane. Like, life, you are enough, and your life is like more precious, way too precious, more than just being out somewhere that you're really unfamiliar with. Um, in a racial aspect, you know, this happened like 35 years ago, literally, and white people starting to travel, pretty much fine until they bring their names in the headlines in the media to raise awareness, find like you know their sons and their daughters and family members, and it's just pretty utterly brutal. Um, I can't really imagine if having like siblings, like whether they're younger or older than me, travel somewhere. Um, they're their first time going. Um, Especially you don't have any relatives that lives in that area. But like the internet was not, it wasn't existing, or wasn't really an uproar around the late '80s. Uh, just trying to develop like how to like there were no pros and cons, there were no do's and don'ts. Even magazines don't really publish at the time about like they did travel guides, but they didn't do like the pros and cons or the do's and don'ts, or what areas should you avoid so much corruptive action, if you will. So I, I mean, I did travel by myself before when I was at Miami, and I had a really good time. Um, at least there were some street lights, and of course I took Ubers. Um, just compared to like back then, you just have like little to none. But however, the closest thing you can do, what I realized from the video is you can actually do like having like free access. You don't really have to pay to let your parents know where you are, and I thought that was a really good concept. Um, a lot of the college kids were like on Bay and stuff, so not on Bay, but at the beach. So I thought that was pretty cool. Um, but yeah, like just having activities like that, um, keep them occupied, not letting them drift off somewhere, making sure like they're okay, and yeah, it's there's nothing wrong, definitely nothing wrong like being safe, because this is your life and your well-being that you're talking about. You're talking about your mental health first and your physical health. You just don't want to migrate elsewhere. That's like really you come across like a drug deal or like a gang activity, and yeah, I mean the point is that like just giving you an idea that black men didn't really get caught up like this back in the 80s and 70s unless it's been swept under the rug and nobody don't talk about it. But again, white people have been brought up into that situation, um, especially like in the news. Like you just hear about like a lot of killings and like in other countries they go to, especially like New Mexico. Um, you have like in Europe, uh, definitely like the South America area, if you will. Yeah, it's like I mean, no offense to like white people or anything, but it's just that us black people, we're knowledgeable of what's going on firsthand. We just don't like, you know, going places. We just don't like being overly curious about things and being overly receptive, that we come across. Like there's, I don't know, that's just my peripheral, in my opinion, but I just have like not a sixth sense, but just, you know, a gut feeling what is going on around me once I'm unknown to an area that I'm at. So you just have to be like really thoroughly be thinking, having like common sense of what do and what not to do. And people can like, even strangers like come up to you and like say, "Hey, do I know you?" And once they do that, just walk away. Don't even try to argue. Just divide. Just completely. Just learn how to divide from people. And like even though they're trying to force it on you or trying to physically, you know, put friction on you, just fight it off as best you can. And yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna put up the link and just invite people to the chat if anybody wanna talk. And yeah, just want to hear of everybody's profile or opinion about the video. So yeah, I always wanted to do this video. I always wanted to show like, we're not black men in general. We're not specific target of, getting like assassinated or like getting killed in, in other cities or, continents. Like this story, like this been headlining, that year alone. But I think years after, it just nobody don't really want to talk about it. But you know, black men just like we're the focal point of like getting killed, having like our target on our back and stuff. And if we make like one false move or like a scenario, like a really crazy scenario we actually get into that we don't really deserve to be in, and it's like it's our butts. But no, I'm just sick and tired of the black card, and I just don't even like saying black alone. But it is what it is. But you gotta just gotta learn how to become more vigilant or overly vigilant where you are. So, and, it's funny because me and Batman were talking about it just a bit. Because his mother, while I think I was on the phone with him, then he's going to Bogota, Colombia, and yeah, he told me that his mom gave him an article through a text message, and I think it was the same video that Willie D made that I watched on his YouTube channel, I believe. That black man got killed in Colombia. Um, then they brung his like his clothing back to the United States, something like that. But I don't know, man. It's beyond me. But you don't know what's going behind closed doors. You know, when we're out in when we migrate to another country. Um, but that kind of reminded me of the conversation that me and Batman had. Like, just don't deter yourself or prevent yourself or deter, if I'm pronouncing it right. Um, like, don't prevent yourself from having fun. Don't prevent yourself from embracing that personal freedom while you're still alive. Because people will tie you down. It's the same people that don't really want you to have fun. They're just tyrannical and want to be like a magnifying glass or a surveillance camera to your life. I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to be around a person that's like breathing down my neck or just, just feel like I'm boxed in or something. Because you don't get really, I mean, regardless who you be with, you don't really get freedom, a person you're with. I mean, it depends if you have like a like minded mindset with people that's like, are positive. Don't be around negative people that don't you want you to succeed or something. Just learn how to oppose what Western society tells you to do. Um, yeah, just feel free, talk on here. I have the StreamYard link on the chat, so just feel free. I'm about to hang it up in a sec if anybody don't want to talk, but uh, let's see. Yep, but that's my video. Um, if anybody wanna like chat on here on the panel, it's your chance. Let's keep talking. Um, yeah, but go ahead and hang it up. This is Blind Assassin MGTOW. I'm not for sure if anybody get the link. Maybe it's like YouTube is not doing it or nobody's not clicking on it. And I don't know if I'm encountering a strange glitch, but it's weird. Yeah, let me. Oh, what's up, Garuda Ghost? Long time no see. Just feel free to come to my live if you want to. Um, this is just about like the gruesome execution of Mark Kilroy. Um, Basically, in '89, he traveled to New Mexico and uh, he got slain by a cult, a witchcraft cult. So he got unalive pretty terrible, like very, very terrible. Um, yeah, yeah, very, very sad. This is a very sad story. Um, I don't want to see like nobody, uh, any race of men, especially getting hurt like that, or not hurt, but getting slain in that type of manner. This is gonna, I don't know, this is really difficult to survive once you're outnumbered by, a gang of cult members that don't really know you, but they're more than happy to like take your life away. And that's why they call them soul snatchers for a reason, I guess. Um, but to but to like really unalive them is just really inexcusable, like extremely. Then you have like the woman, um, denying it really really heavy, talking about something like, well, you know, um, I wasn't part of it. I was been like forced into it. I mean, you want to engage in towards a group. You had a choice to reject it. I mean, you had a choice to like decline to not participate in so much devil worship. But people want to join just because, or it's to make them feel stronger. But at the end of the day, that goes to show that women are not strong enough to be independent. They have to rely on a source, um, just to feel safe or strong, or just to maintain their rep, I guess. But yeah, I mean, this is why you can't really trust women. I mean, you still have, women been doing like witchcraft for centuries now. For centuries. And, it's not the same. Like, you gotta stay away from people who do so much, so much wizardry and outside of their specific activity like that. They tend to act like this. It's all good and they're optimistic. It's there's nothing wrong with women, but at the same time, it is. I mean, there is something wrong with women who does like witchcraft or someone like sorcery and stuff or tarot cards. I don't know, man. I just really laugh at it. I mean, like I tend to not. Excuse me. I tend not to deal with women that are not uh, good people at all. Because once they start acting like really irritable or aggravating, or they're easily agitated towards something, especially something little, then that's a instant red flag. Then I have to like walk away. You have to walk away from these things. I'm telling you. It's it's just not. This guy come like unapproachable towards women, like very unapproachable. You know, it man, you gotta stop. It's definitely not worth it, man. So I'm just gonna, I just gotta hear what people gotta say about it, because it's a really insane case. Very, very terror. Like, it just gut wrenching, very gut wrenching to, you know, see cases like that. And very unbelievable. I mean, it sucks that the parents lost his son, over like a kidnapping. Um, just all together, like, just been abducted by a bunch of people that's already like bound to like die already. I mean, be deleted. Um, but yeah, just gotta stay strong. Gotta stay positive. Gotta stay, you know, vigilant. Again, just be really observant who you talk to. Um, Learn the language, especially. Definitely learn the language, because once you step into somebody's, across the border, once you like go to a plane and travel somewhere, you know, that you have 50-50 chance of feeling safe, you're public enemy number one. Apparently, you just gotta like maintain your safety, and like just stay encouraged to be self-confident at all times. Not overconfident, but self-confident. And sometimes overconfidence can get you deleted as well. Once you encounter, people, you don't know if you encounter assassins, murderers, um, you know, top executioners in a cult. That's how society rolls, and that's how it breeds. I mean, there's no else to it. There's no way out of it. But anyways, I'm out of here. This is Blind Assassin MGTOW. Like, comment, share, and most definitely subscribe. Um, I have to take care of something. I have to go to a store real quick, and just do my thing and just remain homebody. Sorry, but talk to you guys later. I know it's like Sunday football, so hey, but all right, guys, be safe and take care. Deuces.